We want them to know they might get onto us.
Sorry, is this thing on? Is this thing working? That's all it deserves.
Thank you for using the trash cans to vomit in.
Okay, well, should we start?
Yeah, that's the problem is, you're into like 40-year-old British humor. Just can't get it. Major Matthew Mason. That's Matthew, by the way, not Matt, because had some discussions with the current holder of the trademark, and came up with that little friendly little compromise. Been in the fandom, going on 20 years off and on. Started getting really active back in 1982, 83, somewhere back in there. It's been a while. The brain cells start to fry after a while. Publisher of small fanzine Televisions. If you're online on Furry Muck and on the Fan Furry and the various news groups and such. And Fernet. Not much else besides that. Do a little really bad artwork and do some writing. Okay. Hey boy.
Yeah.
Give us a rap.
I'm Eric Blumrick. I've wasted about 12 years in this fandom. Produced a lot of artwork that's appeared in quite a few of the fanzines that have come and gone over the last several years that are central to this fandom. I think it all started in YARF back in 1989 or whenever that was. I think my biggest credits were work with Atari, and I did a little bit of work. My 4 touchdowns in high school, to do an Al Bundy reference, was this page I did for High Times magazine, which was back in my wild and woolly youth of 2 years ago. I am not on Furry Muck. I never will be.
Bullshit, you've been there.
I've been there for 15 minutes, and I offended a lot of people, which was the intent. I went online a couple of times. I've been online a couple of times since then as Adolf Hitler, Pol Pot, Jesus Christ, God, and Joseph Stalin.
Multiple personality disorder.
And
It's his personal hero.
I have seen this fandom degenerate from a very nice thing into a endless parade of human debris. Thank you very much, Greg.
This is limbo.
I'm Deo Montoya. You killed my I'm Pete Solar, sometime cartoonist, sometime animator, sometime costumer, and for about close to 10 years I've been involved with this fandom one way or another. Starting off with little publications like Furlough, and starting off with publications like, what was the name of that? Perversion, thank you. Perversion. Well, they got the same title. Perversion, Furlough was in there too. Rob Razzle and Huzzah. So much of this has gotten around. Perhaps you've seen Furloughs a bit more. And also costume. Been messing around with recently Old Jack Salem Suit, one of Ross Gibson's characters.
Oh, did you bring that, by the way?
Not this time, I'm afraid.
Oh, well. Kidding.
No, probably known. Okay. And I'm here to share the insights on anthropomorphics. Next.
That's me. Hi. I'm Joe Strike. This is for the captioned version. And I don't know if I'm as long-time furry as some people, but I've been in Rob Razzle for, about 6 or 7 years now, and doing whatever feeble attempts at drawing I can come up with. And in my spare time from my real-life job as the closet furry at the Sci-Fi Channel, I've been working on trying to develop a furry live-action kids TV series, and through the which may or may not see the light of day by maybe the next millennium. And at Jim's urging, I'm dragged up here to offer whatever insights or perceptions I can on furry fandom. Hi, Mom.
I'm Jim Grote, noted bastard and asshole. Damn proud of it. Hi, Jim. I'm an Altoids junkie, I'm gonna admit it. No. I'm one of what they call the old Tug Guard. I've been around since 1979 doing anthropomorphics with a comic strip known as Mudflat, which ran for 3 years before I canceled it. I published comics such as Red Shetland, Echoing the Uncivilized, Morphs. I've been in just about everybody who's anything from Marvel to DC to Antarctic Press to God knows what else. I hate the genre. I hate the term furry. So don't please, are you a furry? I'll hurt you if you do.
Hey, say it loud. I'm furry and I'm proud.
No. I don't like the term furry. I prefer the term funny animal. Yes.
Even when they're not funny?
Even when they're not funny. But,
Al, actually, it's a pseudonym, you see. I'm not really me, but
and so a famous swell guy.
I've been active in the fandom. God, I don't know when it started. Sometime in the 70s. Got seriously active in the late 80s. Started holding the party events here, contributing to Perversion, Bestiary, other disreputable fanzines. Keep my hand in slightly, but right now I don't have a whole lot of time for a lot of fan act. Other than this is the big deal. Keep track of what's going on in the field, go to cons. Just generally observe from a bemused distance.
So welcome to Furry Muck Anonymous.
Oh, and I
We're
forgot.
all in recovery.
Yeah.
I
It's
forgot.
okay, man. There's a laptop.
It's been 2 days since my last muck connection.
It's
I
not
feel
booting
like
up, man. It's not booting up.
I need help, man.
Only 1,200 baht.
Long-haired hippie geek.
As Rich stated so well in his editorial in one of his issues, a lot of people think that furry fandom started with Furry Muck, one of the largest muds out there. It did not. Furry fandom is probably older than that, a hell of a lot older than that. It was a lot kinder in the earlier days compared to today. That is the general.
Back before furry was cool.
That's right.
Back when we were skunk fuckers.
I was at that convention, the infamous
I've got the
skunk
poster.
fucker episode. That unfortunately labeled us
Jim,
as.
why don't you go back to the beginning and tell the whole story? Because not everybody here may have.
Yeah, okay.
This is where the picture gets wavy.
This is where, unfortunately, we're people who think, oh, you're a furry? You're one of those people. Unfortunately, a lot of people think that people who are like furry fandom or something like that, oh, you're the guys that get into like boffing sheep and dogs and all that kind of crap. Oh, no.
I think it's time we own up to that stuff and admit it proudly.
Let me try and speak for yourself.
Doesn't every?
What people?
Never mind.
Knock down to a very, very basic thing that furry fandom started about by individuals rather than organized.
Right.
Who wanted to take the animal character beyond the level of, children's books and children's entertainment and light-hearted cartoons. They wanted to take the idea of funny animal characters a bit more seriously. Started coming up with, any number of science fiction and fantasy tales.
Albedo was a great example.
Yeah.
There's the two, and you ask about any furry fan who's asked, they say, what got you involved in the genre? And two things come up every single time, is Disney's Robin Hood and Animal Olympics.
Speak for yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's how most people got into the genre. And that's how they enjoy it and they think of it that way, because those two films pretty much broke the mold of the Scooby-Doo, Winnie the Pooh, Dumbo, and Bambi motif.
The other items that are earlier evidence of taking this all a bit more seriously is Richard Adams' Watership Down. I'm sure you're all familiar with it. A lot of people put that as an influence.
But you can also take this thread back as far as you would like. I was in LA in May or June, and there was an exhibit at a museum out there of illustrated children's books, and they had examples going back to the 13, 14, 1500s
Yeah.
of use of animal characters
Aesop.
in anthropomorphic situations.
Marie de France,
ancient
Renard
Greek
Tales.
gods.
And I've heard Watership Down, Disney
Beatrix
Robin
Potter.
Hood, Beatrix Potter. We can also go back to things like Crazy Cat,
Rupert, Mickey
Pogo.
Mouse.
Secret of Nim.
and Pogo was something where they had animal characters, but the narrative was going on incredibly sophisticated.
He was
levels
getting political. Walt Kelly was getting political. He literally shattered the mold of the cute furry animal by having all these characters going, now let's get into heavy politics and discuss this, and this, and this.
Yeah, and because of that, I would prefer to look at furrydom as something like, see, I'm an authority, I'm up here, you're not, so listen to me. Furrydom is something that's continuing something that's been going on for a long time, as opposed to creating something brand new, as much as we might like to think that
Right.
we're
Kelly didn't
pioneers.
actually do anything new. He carried on a tradition that started in the 12th or 13th century with the Reynard stories. They were comments on the politics and the society of their time. And but in the early years of this century, funny animals just became gag characters.
Yeah.
He brought it back to its roots of using the animals as substitute characters.
Symbols.
In the old days, you couldn't draw an insulting picture of the king or one of the high knights or the cardinal. I'd get into your career real quick. But you could draw this character who was, king of the beast, you know, and had deniability. Same thing that Kelly did. You know, it's okay, the characters sort of resembled things, but people didn't get insulted by him, they didn't get bent out of shape, they laughed at him, and that's what he wanted.
There was one time when he had to do 2 street sequences of a strip of Pogo, one political and one non-political.
Because papers would decide that they didn't want to run some of those things. This Doonesbury went through this later on.
Gary Schroeder had the same problem.
That was an editorial thing that was forced upon him. He had to do substitute strips.
No, I had to do that when I was syndicated. I had to, if I came across a subject that was touchy, I had to confront my editor and go, okay, give me your opinion on this. And 90% of the time he said, I'm not running it. And I said, why? Well, it's too political. I said, how can it be political? It's a joke. Well, you might piss somebody off. And
Early PC-dom.
PC was starting to creep up, and the word in my strip, I hate to say it, was due to one editor in San Francisco who didn't like a damn thing I did. No matter what I did, he hated it.
You're right, Stannis.
He was taking my strip and rewriting it, putting in whole new dialogue, and not telling me. I was supposed to be informed upon any changes, editorial changes, by the syndicate, and he was not informing the syndicate. And I couldn't understand. I was getting hate mail from San Francisco on a constant basis. I'm going, what's going on? Until finally I got a copy of the strip, and the one that ended it was where I had a yacht character. It was a line going into a recruiting. And he goes, and this was back in Nicaragua, was a real hot item, and El Salvador was real going hot and steady. And he wanted to be a Marine. Of course, the sergeant goes, by the way, can you speak Spanish? And he goes, oh, sí, Sargento. And I speak, read, and write Spanish fluently. And the sergeant goes, hey, Lieutenant, we got another Marine from El Salvador. And the young Marine was soon to be Marine, was going, damn, I want to Guam. And in military terms, that's the biggest insult shithole you can go to is Guam. Well, this guy changed it from Guam to, I want to go to Nicaragua. And I'm like, I don't get the gag. And they're all going, screw this. So that's why I canceled the strip. And of course, I regret doing that. Really do.
I'd like to say one of the other influences that that predates organized furry fandom, or at least right at the time it was beginning to come together as an organized furry fandom. Reed Waller published The Cat Dancer
Booty.
through Kitchen Sink. Wasn't that Booty?
It started out
It did start out in Booty, okay.
Yeah, it started out in Voodie in 1976.
But whoever saw Booty.
Only those who were members of Voodie.
Exactly. But the thing that got around all around and a lot of air, and certainly a lot of bad press, which only helped it made more visible.
One of the things,
Cat Dancer strip.
one of the things that interests me from what I've been able to pick up about the start of furry fandom since I sort of stumbled on it maybe a couple of years after it happened, is it seems to have happened kind of spontaneously, that people who were fans of anthropomorphics, maybe on their own or with a friend or two, suddenly started linking up with other people, I guess through the medium of science fiction fandom and conventions. And this organized furrydom that's come up since, I guess, the mid-early 80s, sort of just spontaneously coalesced on its own, almost like there was enough psychic energy and enough people.
It was a combination of events, a lot of it linked to the appearance of serious funny animal comics in the mid-'80s, Albedo being the one that really broke through.
Cerebus was the first one.
Cerebus had a big following.
Wonder what brought that to mind, Jim?
Oh, you can see him.
Lop your head off for that.
He had a big following. People didn't realize what the attraction was there. Why are they interested in this character? People were following. And ElfQuest had a lot of furry interest. People were gathering around that. And then Albedo came out, and that was like directly what was wanted. and people started writing the letters columns, picking up each other's names, getting together at comic conventions, and the fandom started to grow.
San Diego Comic-Con 1986 is where the first furry party occurred. Mark Merlino, who was probably known as one of the quote, gods, formed the party, and he was expecting maybe 5, 10 people showed up. Over 50 people showed up, freaking the crap out of everybody. Nobody was expecting this many people to come in, and it was like, it's like gay fandom, somebody coming out of the woodwork going, "Oh, you're coming out too?" And we're going, "I'm a furry, I admit it, I'm sorry." It's okay, it's okay.
Also, that organized Japanese animation fandom, which got going in the 70s, turned out to be a rather large building that spilled over into furry fans.
How that happened.
There's a lot of
The anime fans coming together, and they turned out they also liked anthropomorphic
In
characters.
fact, organized anime fandom, according to Merlino, grew out of people getting together to watch old Osamu Tezuka TV series like The Amazing Three and Kimba the White Lion.
Yeah.
CFO or
And then they said, well, what else is
CFO.
over in Japan? And they started bringing over other stuff, and that became the CFO, and that became anime fandom. So you could say that we owe anime fandom to furry fandom. Well, it grew out of people who like those animal goofy shows that Tezuka did.
Right. It's one of the things that you have to consider that it just, like I said, it spontaneously erupted. When they did the very first conference, which was, what, 89? Conference 0, which occurred in Los Angeles. 81 people showed up to that. I was one of the people there. And we're like, whoa, this is great. 81 people is it's a lot of people. The next year it was like 125.
I almost went.
This year, for Conference 8, or Conference 9, they're predicting over 1,400.
Last one was about 1,100, wasn't it?
Last one was 1,200 people.
Not to open up a can of worms, but I'm willing to say that a good 30% of the people there have no interest in furry fandom.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, I think that might be
If
a
not
topic
more.
to save for another forum.
I'd have to argue with your percentages. I'd say it's more like 40 to 50%.
Anyway, that's another forum, like you said.
Yeah,
I just wanted to
think
interject
so.
that to
Yeah, I mean, because
don't get too excited.
for what I was saying before, for me personally, I was a furry before I discovered furry fandom, and I noticed that talking to a lot of other people who got into furry fandom, that this was an interest they had all along, and they didn't have a lot of people to share this with, which is also leads to another discussion. But I'm just wondering, how many people in this room were furries before they discovered furry fandom? Yes. And there you go. That's like about like just about 90% or so. And so I hear nowadays that people are coming across furry fandom on the internet, and they say, hey, this is interesting, and they start developing an interest after being exposed to it. But I think that having a preceding interest in the topic is something that is, I think, common to furries by and large, like in
Even
this
so,
room.
the ones who discovered on the internet probably have also already had these inclinations all along.
They were furry and they didn't know it.
It's when they discover that a whole bunch of other people have an organization where they share that same interest.
I'm not the only weird one.
Welcome to the family.
It was weird when I was at a convention in Wisconsin, which is pretty much sterile of furry fandom. I set up at a convention, and then all these people go, "Oh, you do this?" I go, well, "Yeah." Can I show you what I draw? And they're like really secretive about it. I'm like, "Hey, this is really neat." They go, "You like it?" The next thing you know, they're crawling out of the ground. Let me show you this. When we had our Gen Con furry party this year, we were expecting maybe 15 people show up. We had over 40 show up. And these guys went like 6 blocks out of their way away from the convention center to come to this hotel just to have a furry party. And it was great because we're all having a good time, yakety, yakety. We're all comparing combat war stories about various conventions. Go, which is a good pro furry con, which is a bad furry con, which is this, this, and this, and this.
This fellow was going to make a comment. I'm just curious what you were going to offer.
You go ahead, Bill.
Okay, I just wanted to point out that the argument before about they may have certain inclinations toward that, it's not necessarily the case. I mean, I've been on a number of the electronic media, but I got interest in it through the written media beforehand, which I understand is unusual for a lot of the furry people.
Which
Actually, that was actually the point I was going to make. I was going through Ed Zolna's back issues bins today, and I actually found the comic book that directly got me into furry fandom, which was an issue of Normal Man featuring some sort of the Smelts, which is like a cross between the Smurfs and ElfQuest. Yeah, and it's about as bad as it sounds.
Sounds fishy to me.
But one of the characters who did a guest appearance was Cutie Bunny. You know, this sort of anthropomorphic rabbit character. I said
Very
to that,
sexy and cute anthropomorphic.
sexy and cute. I said, yeah, gee, that's kind of neat. And then I was at local comic shop, Fat Jack's, and I came across a copy of Army Surplus Comics number 5. So I started, picked up an issue, and I liked it. And I ordered the rest of the run from Josh Quagmire, started corresponding with him, and eventually got hooked up with other furry fans like Rich Chandler, who in turn introduced me to other people, and it just started to go from there. Now another thing which hasn't, I don't know how much it's been touched on per se, is the early electronic versions or early electronic media in furry fandom. You know, before you had Furry Muck, before you had Alt Fan Furry, there were computer BBSs, as early as like 82, 83, I think, right? About
I'm not sure when the first one set up, but the FurNet came into being in the latter part of the 80s. I think it was 87 or 88.
when did the Electric Hulk go online?
It went on May 6th, 1987.
Okay, so it's 10 years ago.
I found a little post-it that I've written it down on, and I told that to Fred Patton.
All right, so May 6, 87, Electric Bolt, which was the first East Coast furry BBS, furry / ElfQuest, science fiction, but it was the first one on the East Coast with any kind of anthropomorphic content. And over the years, via FidoNet, internet, and other places, the number of boards has grown. Right now, what's the latest protocols? And Lord knows how many sites and websites and mucks and what have you out there on the internet proper.
Now, the thing is, with the internet, furry fandom has literally exploded.
Well, I was going to interject something that what this gentleman said up here was absolutely, well, he touched on some points I wanted to comment. I have the reputation of being very anti-internet. I can't fathom why. But I think while the internet is a very viable medium for communication between special interest groups such as Funny Animal Fandom, its importance in furry fandom, just as its importance in every other facet of life that the internet has touched, has been way overblown. I remember,
particularly by the participants therein.
Exactly. I remember my history of furry fandom only goes back 12 years, but I remember, thank you very much, we did very well without the internet. We got a lot.
Yes.
I did. One of the comics we never mentioned was the Critters comic book put out by Fantagraphics,
Yes.
which was like the first major publisher that put out to my knowledge, first major publisher that put out a good quality funny animal anthropomorphic
And ran for about
magazine.
50 issues.
50 issues, and
That's going to get to that
Birthright.
quack eventually.
Birthright sort of started off in there, and that's what really got me into it at the very beginning. But really, people communicated over good old-fashioned mail. They went to conventions. They drove to each other's houses, and it started just like every other fandom. Yes, the internet has gotten a lot of new people, and just over the past couple of years, I have seen it explode. I mean, hundreds of new artists are approaching all over the place. It's amazing. But,
You drawing my son?
yeah, because here's the way I understand it, Jim.
Not the size of the book,
Maybe
it's
I'm
the skill of the
incorrect.
artist.
It started out as furry parties when mostly just artists would get together and they exchanged artwork with each other on their sketchbooks. It was a way for artists to exchange their work and get to know each other. But fans started coming to here and realized, gee, all I gotta do is bring a black book and these guys will draw in it. Free art. Have you ever noticed if you say furry art really fast, it sounds like free art?
Yes.
If you say it even faster, it sounds like fart. On the Spock and Kirk thing.
Oh, wow.
Do your little thing.
Yes, come on, Peter.
Yes. Oh, well, how did this go? It was something on the stories that went something along the lines of, Captain, we must attempt a Vulcan butt meld.
Which relates directly to furry.
Fans will at some level put sex into darn near anything. One of the popular sites on the internet, I am told by the operator, is a site where you can go and get disciplined by Mistress Janeway.
So stern. But I think that should relate back to something else which needs to be acknowledged and accepted and even celebrated in furry fandom is the aspect of physicality and sensuality that is woven into the idea of pursuing this metaphor of intelligent animals, of anthropomorphic animals. And I think that's present in just almost everything that comes out of furry.
Intelligent is the most important.
Yes.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Well, the thing is,
It's a
nobody,
given, yeah.
nobody when they draw a character, a funny animal character, sits down and says, "I'm going to draw this character ugly." When I sit down, I try and make yeah, exactly, except me.
They don't sell.
I try and sit down and make a funny animal character appealing. I mean, what artist doesn't try and portray a subject matter in an appealing way?
Geiger.
You look at his stuff, you look at his stuff and you say, "That's a disease-ridden toilet. That's the most beautiful disease-ridden toilet I've ever seen."
True.
But with, again, with the sexuality of this whole aspect, I mean, a lot of the fan, this, again, a percentage of the fan, they want the, as I use the term, gun camera footage of all the parts in action, nice, close, tight shots, and all, we're going, can you physically do that?
To me, that says, they don't care about the character.
No, all they want to see is the parts in action. And simply because I saw somebody do this at one of the cons. I can't remember who it was. They got some hardcore porn magazine and actually cut out the centerfold, the crotch and the penis and the vagina in action, and they pasted it on a piece of paper and drew animal around it. And I'm going, why didn't I think of that? And the thing is, it sold. It went to auction, and people, isn't that cool? And we're going, what a great comment.
So dislike and seem to despise the furry fan. I'm not even aware. Just about everything.
I think it's pretty clear.
Is into anime/manga, but
Well, anything I've seen is a huge overlap.
Yeah, that's where I got started.
Yeah, the one fan grew out of the other, so it's a little hard to separate at this late date. I'm aware of no really deep schisms. Anime furry interest titles are getting more common, if anything. Capricorn just got released after a long time. Ushio and Tora is now the volume 3. Other things are coming in the pipeline, I'm assured. We're going to be seeing some of Miyazaki's stuff coming over here because Disney bought the rights to it, and most of his stuff is at least peripherally furry interest. We're going to have Porco Rosso.
Kiki Silver Service with PG.
Ponpoco will probably get an art house release because it's too intense to go to general release. Princess Mononoke is going to get a full bore release in both subbed and dubbed versions. They're going to have named voices doing it. And anime fandom is cheering all this. This is all mainstream. And I'm not aware of anybody that hates the furries. If anything, sometimes the furries are embarrassed by the anime people because they're the ones getting all the really raunchy, disgusting images out of Korea and where all the porn manga books are printed and putting them in the nets and plastering them everywhere.
I think that's something to recognize, that any fandom has an entire range within it of stuff that is like really outrageous and over the top and XXX to stuff that's basically PG or G rated. And I think, just let me throw one more point in, that's a sign of our growth, is that furry fandom is growing large enough to have
subcultures,
fursuit people, online people, gay furries. I think that's really a sign of growth and health for furry fandom.
But about the,
I've heard at least one opinion up there that the physical aspect seems more prevalent, the sexual aspect. Is this like
more with sex?
well? I mean, this is like a common agreement here, and if so, why do you think? Where do you think it originated from? I just want to hear some opinion here. I've got some of my own.
Or the sensuality in general?
The sexuality in general.
Well, I think that comes with the metaphor of being an animal. I think animals represent our physicality, that as intelligent, rational beings, we sort of like to keep separate.
It's like the term. You got, foxy lady, guys hung like a horse, stuff like that.
Mitch? Yeah, I just want to put another comment about the anime. If there are any subsets of the anime fandom that don't like the furry fandom, I'm going to venture that they are the ones that are relatively new to the field, and were introduced to it not, from a fan standpoint so much as they went down to Blockbuster, wall to wall, or whatever, saw the anime stuff and got into it that way.
One other thing I'd like to add to that is that there's also, as in any fandom, as you said, I think there may just be a small section of anime fandom who it's not so much against furry per se, but they don't like the gun camera footage.
Well, they don't see that.
And
Themselves would be so fuckers.
exactly.
Does anybody?
Well, it sells. I guess somebody likes it.
Well, I want to go back to addressing Jay's question now.
Yeah, the thing that I think explains why there is so much more erotica, for example, in furry fandom is that most of these other fandoms are fandoms about things that are created by other mass media outlets. I mean, Trek fandom, they all bow to Paramount to get what they want. Anime fans, to Japan. Furry fandom is mostly built up around the artists who actually participate in it. There's a lot of direct, there's a lot more creativity and originality in the furry fandom. And there's also a lot more direct feedback because, the creators and the fans are friends and associates.
There's also a certain positive feedback that you want now.
There is kind of a little bit of a vicious cycle thing there, and he
The
also
artists don't like
explains.
to do sequential stories. They like to do spot illos. And if you're going to put all your effort into one little piece, you want to make sure it sells. And the one that's sure to sell is that hot, steamy one. The one that's a slice of life, well, that's not going to do anything unless you do 10 pages of it and tell a story. But that's too damn much work.
I don't want to sound like a communist here. Oh, heaven forbid. But
Speak on, comrade.
okay.
Okay.
But unfortunately, being that much of, for lack of a better term, a slave to market forces and justifying limiting your expressive scope by saying this is what the market wants, you are most damaging, limiting yourself, and B, by contributing to the overwhelming majority of erotica, you are limiting the genre as a whole.
Yeah. Anybody did that in
it's-
another field would be called a hack.
Exactly, and geez, I can think of a lot of examples, but I'm not going to mention any names because I don't want people to. Well, no, I don't care if you hate me, but I don't want to.
Not in a closed room.
But it's just that there's. I was just wondering. Funny, the whole genre of funny animals has so many possibilities with it, but it just seems so many people are just doing chunking out like a steel press. This porn. Porn. You go into the art show. You go into the conference art show, and even in the general audience section, there's stuff that I wouldn't show a child, or my mother, or any of my friends outside furry fandom.
This may be on topic. I would like to know, in opinions both from the panel and from the audience, why is it that there is an overwhelmingly male presence in this room, as well as in the fandom itself?
It's that way in every fandom.
You go to any
It's a
of the
guy thing,
panels
the girls would
here,
host.
and
There are certain fandoms where females do predominate,
Oxford love affairs.
well, yeah,
vampires.
but
Initially Star Trek.
Yeah.
initially Star Trek,
Beauty and the Beast fandom?
Oh, yeah.
of course.
in the early
So,
days.
but there are some fandoms, such as furry fandom and to a great extent science fiction fandom, where the males predominate. Although science fiction fandom has gotten a lot, is pretty much 50-50 these days.
After 60 years, it's
It's
happening.
comics fandom has also been very close to comics fandom, and that's also largely a male
Whips.
item.
Technology, futuristic politics.
And there's, you have another,
Okay, Jay?
go for it.
Yeah, I just wanted to see if I understood what Eric was saying. You're basically saying that beyond the market saying what the artist should produce, the artists are also determining who the market is?
Could you repeat that question again?
You lost me.
Well, instead of just the one way,
No, I'm saying that people.
Are you positing a vicious circle?
Perhaps I am. Perhaps I am because it's just that people. There are some people who just exclusively produce this stuff, and I mean, whatever floats their boat, they can do it. I don't care. This is America. They can do whatever they want to because I do a lot of stuff that offends people. But it's just that the way that I see it is that these people are saying, well, sex sells. Well, that may be true, but On the other hand, I think they are shortchanging the genre and themselves and the fandom as a whole, because by producing all this sex exclusively because sex sells, they are limiting. They're limiting themselves and the genre, as I said, because I mean, you look at the wide variety of stories that have come out that are non-sexual, such as Jim Grote's Red Shetland and Steve Bellacci's Albedo, and the Sleepers thing, which is sort of like an alternate history sort of thing. And there's just so many different things that can be done with it. And I just see maybe one of those for 100,000 pages of furry erotica. And I just find I once did a comic strip that said it was just that there's so many possibilities. Can't you think of anything better than to just draw these things without any clothing?
Let's get the woman's point of view, so we
Yes.
have a different perspective.
Actually, I just had a question, just to play devil's advocate. Why do you expect people who do this sort of thing to behave any differently than the rest of the culture? I mean, sex sells everywhere. You look in any subculture, mainstream, subculture, goth, furry, anywhere, sex sells. It's all
I
over the
defy
place.
you to find anything. Come to a furry party and look through a whole bunch of sketchbooks for a couple of hours, and then go into your.
He's got a point.
Then go into your hotel room and turn on the TV, and see how much. I mean, yes, sex may sell to the general public in all varieties of society and all places in society, but not to the extreme extent that it is portrayed and pushed and produced in furry fandom.
Yeah.
I am not asking people to behave differently than general society. I'm asking them to behave like people in general society.
Okay, that's all I think that's it. Wait, let's have one conversation. Let's have one conversation.
In the back, you have a question.
Actually, it's a comment on the subject of the fandom becoming dominated by this sexual overtone. I know that when I first started interested in furry fandom, I started because I picked up the comic book Xanadu a couple years back.
Excellent work.
And I started getting more interested. I found other comic companies. I got into it. And I started getting on the internet once I got a computer of my own. And I realized that on the internet, it's horrible because like you cannot find any like good, normal furry art. Everything on there is all this horrible erotic stuff.
Speak to this guy. He can get you onto this thing called the SCFA, which is a
Sweet, clean
furry archive. Clean, funny animal artwork. Thousands of images.
Yeah. But yeah, there is.
There's a lot of bad art out there because it's free.
Yeah. That's.
If you look for the bad
Well, it starts with wall.
The other comment I had is that maybe sex wouldn't sell so good if it were easier to get laid.
I believe Scott had another.
I think that's our other discussion we're going to have.
I believe
An
Scott up
appeal
here
to
had more.
diversify. Stop keep aiming for the lowest common denominator.
On the internet, it's so easy to find furry erotic art that if you look for it, you're going to find it. And it's the same way for clean art, I guess you could call it. If you look for clean art, then you're going to find it. If you're going to find it in a comic book store, especially.
Okay, show me.
By your estimation, by the stories that are coming out, how many stories where being furry is a part of the plot as opposed to being an adjunct? I mean, like for example, Albedo being furry was an integral part of the entire universe, whereas there are several. I can't think of any offhand, but you can make a story where it's like two humans and say they're furry, that adds something. Yeah, but how many by rough percentage of you?
Yes.
You're looking for stories where there's a reason for these characters to be fun animals other than that they're cute to draw.
Either there's a reason or because they are animals.
It's integral to the story. It couldn't work any other way.
Well, briefly, Reed Waller addressed that in his Art of Omaha book, and the short version, since we only got about 5 minutes here, is that animal types make for a very handy shorthand to establishing a personality. Whereas if you have somebody who's depicted as a fox, you have this sort of subconscious thing saying, oh, okay, he's sneaky and sly. Or you have somebody who's a dog character, oh, trustworthy and dependable, or a cat is sultry and exotic, that sort of thing. What's that?
Bull is strong, powerful, yeah.
Bull's brawny and
Not too
powerful.
bright, yeah.
You know, a pig is a glutton.
Yeah. You were hitting.
You know, a pig or a bear is always a big beefy guy. And
Frankly, the series that have tried to have the animals integral to the whole story haven't really prospered as much as they probably should have. Like Rudolph, Prince of Fur was a nice story set on an alternate planet, and really didn't find that much of a market. The Xanadu stories that someone mentioned earlier were nice because they had different classes, the exotics, the domestiques, the freeborn, and well, fortunately Vicky isn't here this year, but these things just
I was talking to her earlier.
didn't find a strong enough audience to set a trend of any sort. The other stuff is just sort of just chugging along out there, occupying the space.
It's like in the
Scott, why don't you go ahead and wrap up?
Watership Down and Secret of Nim are two great examples of stories that really couldn't work any other way.
Right, yeah, exactly. It's like in my case with Red Shetland, we had, it got annoying when I had a character who he pointed out, he had somebody who was good looking, buxom, chainmailed, typical hormone throb, as I had somebody describe it once. They go, why isn't she getting laid? I go, because she's not. And people were like criticizing me for this. I'm going, excuse me, it's my character. If she doesn't want to get laid, she ain't gonna get laid. So quit pushing it. And finally, I had to break down because I was watching cells just go like this, and I had her get laid, and issue eyes go back up again.
But some of us at least work within your limitations and asking you for things to do with Red.
Huh?
At least I was.
Oh yeah. No, it wasn't just that, but it was amusing though to watch people. As soon as I got her laid in issue 9, they're, we can see more. We can see more. I'm going, maybe. And I've had people, you bastard, you're not showing gun camera footage. I'm going, yeah.
So
Jim,
that became another market. I think since Omaha the Cat Dancer and others, you can go to a comic shop now and find a whole rack of X-rated comics.
Oh yeah,
Okay,
2 minutes.
Okay, 5 words. Irma, Thelma, and a crowbar. Okay.
Anyway.
Okay, we're ready to be booted out. So thanks for coming.
Yep. Please swing by the table. We have a table with furry art and all that stuff.
Thank you very much.